In this video, we're actually going to be going over how we created our joint budget after we got married. Hey wealth builders, welcome back to another episode of The Bemused. I'm Mishak.
And I'm Akiva.
And on this channel, we talk about all things personal finance for young adults just like you and us. Without further ado, let's dive right on in.
So one major thing that we decided on before we even put our budget together was the fact that we wanted our budget, our day-to-day living budget, necessities budget, to be based off of one income. Because at that point, we did not know, what would be happening in terms of employment for Mishak moving out here and things like that. Or, if anything were to ever happen where one of us was without a job, we wanted to be able to survive on one person's income. So that was the basis for which we were building our budget, and we were keeping that in the back of our minds, and we were pretty successful at doing that in the end, is making sure that everything, all of our needs, fit neatly into one person's salary.
So the first thing that we decided on was the date when we were going to merge everything. So although we were getting married October 10th, we decided that October 1st would be the date that we wanted to merge everything together, just because it was honestly the cleanest, just simpler.
It was the beginning of the month, and we also had already purchased the house, so obviously we had a mortgage payment for October 1st that, had to come from somewhere, so we had to figure out, how we were gonna work together on that, merge finances, etc. So it just made sense to start from October 1st for that reason.
After we got that date, solidified, then we started to go through our individual budgets and things that we, were spending individually and merge that together. Some things were adjusted to suit, to what made sense for us now that we were forming one household. And some things are, I think, even removed just altogether. We just really fine-tuned it to make sure that it was something that was going to work for us.
Yeah. So the first step was really determining how we wanted to outlay our budget. So we are definitely spreadsheet people when it comes to creating a budget. Now, how we track spending is different, and I've made a video about how I used to do this individually, and the process really hasn't changed that much now that we've decided to join finances. But I'll link that video. That gives you kind of more of a view of how it was kind of as a single gal, and now how it is now that, we're married. Of course, in that video, I said it and I'll say it again. We start with the non-negotiables. So for us, that is tithing, 10% of our gross income. So of course, that was the first thing we plugged into our budget. And so that was obviously the easiest part to check the box. Then we went through and put in all of our other expenses from our individual budgets outside of housing. Because when we first put our initial draft of our joint budget together, this was before we were in the process of buying the home. We kind of put this together as a rough draft initially to determine how much we could afford to spend on housing, and therefore how much of a house we could afford. So in the early days, it's of course gone through a couple of iterations since then, but we at least had a rough outline as to kind of the numbers we were going to be looking at. So outside of housing, we then filled in everything else and then kind of backed into the housing number, which is how I budgeted before as well, to determine how much I should have paid, how much I should be paying for rent. So we talked about car insurance and maintenance. I had my thing going where I would put a certain amount of money every month into a car maintenance / emergency fund. So that's the account that I would pay my monthly insurance premiums out of. If my car ever broke down, that's the fund that I take money out of to fix it, etc. Registration fees, anything that has to do with car insurance, maintenance fees, that came out of that budget. So I was putting in at that point $100 a month into that budget, and you were putting in $80?
Yeah, $83, I think, to be exact.
He's such a weirdo. How did you get to $83? I don't know. But point is, we just honestly simply decided to combine that, and so our car insurance and maintenance fund now is $180 that automatically goes into that account each month to maintain both of our vehicles. Then we had student loans, and for student loans, we basically put in the minimum payment into our budget. So what my minimum payment, of course in non-forbearance times, what my minimum payment would be, what his minimum payment would be, put that together, put it in the budget.
Next, with our grocery line item, this is where we kind of, made some adjustments down. My budget prior to getting married was $125. Akiva's was, I think, $100. So we decided to settle on $200 because we thought that $100 per person a month is a decent amount.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be eating the same meals. Like, it should hopefully, lessen things out on average. And if you guys are wondering how we eat that low, I've seen a lot of people with some crazy food budgets out there, y'all. Like, $200, we think that's enough for us. Before that, like I said, it was a $125 and $100. We were living comfortable off of that, so.
Yeah, and I rarely spent the whole $125 budget that I had, so we thought $200 was reasonable. Then for gas, we arrived at $120 for the both of us, and this is a normal situation type budget. Just want to also mention that as well. So we didn't budget to the current situation that we're all in. We just decided to budget on if tomorrow things went back to normal, where would we be? And again, that budget I think was also off of a rough estimate because my car has a smaller tank, so it costs it's very affordable to fill up, as well as Akiva. So that's where we got those gas numbers at. Then something that we decided to include in our budget was a gift and giving line item.
Yeah, so we talked about essentially what gifts are we used to giving, our family members and friends and things like that. So once we talked about that, we came up with an annual number and just divided that over 12 months, and that's how we got to our gifts and giving line, which for us is $50 a month that we put aside for gifts and giving.
Then for travel, we decided to put aside $100 a month for travel, and although it seems low, the only place that we pretty much foresee ourselves traveling to on a consistent basis is to New York, and it probably won't be like every month because of the current situation. It'll be once in a while. So our method is that if we don't spend it for 1 month, we just let it roll over to the next. Then next we have our phone bill. We actually did a lot of research on this. Before we were on a plan under my mom, both of us were under that, and we were paying separately the money for that, and we decided that we would switch and get our own plan after we got married. So we were really trying to make sure that we found something that was going to work with our budget, and this was probably the most challenging thing to do, in my opinion, because cell phone plans are just so expensive if you're going with one of the major three. There are some prepaid options, but again, for our lifestyle, we weren't planning for our current situation. We travel, at least what's going on right now. We like to travel and travel quite often. So we wanted to make sure that we had a phone plan that would allow us to do that, where we wouldn't be hit with fee after fee after fee. So we arrived at a phone company, and the budget for that was $124. We actually had to bump it. It started off at $120, so it was just $4 over. And that is inclusive of fees, taxes, everything. So we're at $124 even.
And that'll be consistent from month to month. No variables or variations in that.
And then we had allowances because we thought that it's also important for each of us to have our own separate money for doing things such as gifts or anything like that, that if we wanted to buy for each other, that we wouldn't necessarily know, well, hey, he swiped X at this place, I know that that's a gift for me, or have any type of suspicion. So in our allowances, it also takes in consideration self-care. So for Akiva, that is the cost for her to get her nails done, to get wax, anything like that she wanted to do. We put in the average cost of those items and built that into her allowance. And then for myself, haircuts, anything that I would need as well, which you can clearly see that I need a haircut right now. So that is what goes into allowance. So and there's
So I get $215 a month, and Misha gets $175 a month.
Yes.
Obviously, I get a little bit more because my stuff's more expensive. $100 a month doesn't even cover if I did all those things consistently every month. So I really gotta cycle and choose what I want to do that month.
Then we included dates in our budget. So outside of if we wanted to purchase any gifts or anything like that for each other, that's what those, like I said, those other line items are for. Dates is, something that we include in our joint budget for, those intimate one-on-one times with each other. So if we decide to go out to eat, if we decide to order in, that's not something that's coming from personal budgets unless we choose to do that. Next, we have life insurance. That is something that's important to have. God forbid if one of us were to pass away, we want to make sure that we are covered in that sense, to cover the things such as the home that we live in, and make life a little bit easier for the next person upon our demise. Hopefully not, but just planning.
We actually haven't purchased the policies yet, but we know that's the premium for the policy that we are planning to get.
Yes.
So we have that in our budget because obviously that's an expense that's going to be coming up. We also didn't mention how much our budget was for dates, which is $75.
Sorry, it's late. And then last, we have our miscellaneous / buffer line item. And we think that this is really important for each person to have. For us, we have $41.45. And we don't think that your miscellaneous budget item should be large. Because if you have everything in miscellaneous and you're just pulling from it whenever you need extra whatever, then you don't really have accurate data. Because if you're just pulling from miscellaneous every month, and it's going towards your hair or going towards makeup or going towards your water bill, then you're not budgeting accurately. You want to make sure that you have everything down to a science. And honestly, for us, this budget might fluctuate. We just moved into this house. We've only been here for about a month. So the bill that we really don't know how it's going to go yet is the electric bill. We've only had maybe one bill, and it wasn't for, I don't think, that long of a time period. So this next bill that is coming up will probably be a good tester to see exactly how much we're going to pay. So that miscellaneous budget item might get smaller, or it might get bigger. I don't know. We'll see how things go.
Mm-hmm. So that leads us back to the big gap, which is housing, which you haven't talked about yet. So once we added up all those things, what we think is necessary, and this is our bare bones budget. Like, none of this stuff is going to get cut in the event that somebody loses an income. Like, we still need to live somewhat. And I think we've been very, very conservative with the numbers we have in our budget. There is no fluff in here. And so when we backed into that number to say, like, okay, well, what's the most we can spend on housing and still comfortably fit in one person's salary? And that number ended up being right around $1,600 all in. So in our budget, we currently have, and it's, a few dollars over when all is said and done, our total housing cost amounts to $1,637.90. So that includes our mortgage, our real estate taxes, our HOA fee, our electric bill, which, like I said, right now we have budgeted at $60 a month. So that's really the wild card to see how much we actually will spend on electricity now that we've been living in the home, all day, every day, actually using the electricity. Our first couple bills, like you said, were really small because we weren't really here. So now that we're here, living here, we'll see what that ends up being. Our internet, we pay $39.99 a month for our internet. And then our homeowners insurance, we are putting aside, we pay our premium annually. We are putting aside $25 a month for our annual premium because our homeowners insurance premium is only $300 a year, which is awesome. So we're going to be putting aside that money every month so we're able to put that toward our homeowners insurance. And those are all of our housing related costs. Like I said, just over $1,600.
Mm-hmm. And that internet cost that we mentioned is also inclusive of tax, so there's no additional tax added to that.
What we talked about in our last video as to how we're planning on paying down $90,000 worth of debt in the next 3 years is because we are using all of the other person's salary to make excess payments above the minimum payments that are included. Of course, we still have to make the minimum payments regardless of if one of us were working or not. So, we have in total between the minimum payments and what the other person's bringing in, we should be able to make payments of $3,000 a month. Now, there may be some changes coming down the line. We have to find some health insurance for the new year, which right now we're both covered under our parents' plans, and so we're trying to make that switch off. So we'll see how much that costs us and what the impact is to our budgets to our debt payoff plan, but we're hopeful that we should still be able to swing that even with a little bit of an increased monthly cost.
And how we're actually tracking all of this is actually we're using Good Budget. So Kiva did mention this before, and we'll put a link in the card referencing the video that she made about Good Budget. And so far it's been pretty good. It was a bit challenging for me in the beginning to get on board with using an app or some sort of tracking thing online. But so far, ironically, I have been the person who has been updating the budget.
That's only because I've been having phone issues.
Pretty much on a weekly basis. So I don't do it daily, but I do it weekly. So I keep all of our receipts and all that good stuff, and I go through and I allocate it to where it's supposed to go in our budget. And so far, like I said, it's been okay. We'll see how it goes. There are some learning curves. I made a few mistakes, but overall it's been good. I'm actually using Good Budget for my personal budget as well. Mm-hmm. So at least, I'm using it on all fronts. So I've actually given up my spreadsheets altogether. I'm making it work with the Good Budget app, and so far no major complaints.
Yeah.
So
that's all we got.
So comment down below and tell us, if what you think of our budget, how you're budgeting, especially if you're married, if you are doing joint budgeting, or if you're doing things separately. We'd love to hear that. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss when we post new content. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
And just talk about the overall process that we went through when we were doing this.